Day one, actually been here 5 days, but this is day one of kind of prepping the bikes and getting ready to go. Zacatecas, Mexico. Bob and Brian are shit.
Thank you doesn't cut it for what this guy did. I mean, for sticking around until 10:30 at night. This happened about 3:30 in the afternoon on January 20th, 2018 is when all this happened. And that guy stayed with us until we finally left.
That's the back of the Alamo right there.
And so 4 hours for the ambulance. It was, another hour or so for the police to show up. And they showed up and they interrogated us looking for wrongdoing. They wanted to go through all of our cameras.
New York, when we left the bikes from last trip, we came from Hong Kong, New York, and then out to Buffalo. Picked up the bikes, got on them, went to Montreal for 110 miles to Montreal where we met.
Hey folks, this is Brian. September 14th or 15th around midnight between the two.
They, via the translator, which is the guy from New Braunfels, and that was something I understand they had a job to do, but we weren't really quite expecting that to the level of what they did, of how they did it.
So as we were making our way out of Laredo and we had our first moment on the road and the city started to peel away, we were in the country and we ran into those Las Palmas trees and these high cactus trees, and the landscape was gorgeous. And the weather was good and we were looking around like, man, what a great day. And our plan for the day was to make it to our first stop in Zacatecas. And so the roads were great. I mean, we were almost the only people on the road for the most part, and they were nice pavement, no slick spots, they were good quality pavement, and no weather concerns. And we pulled over for a quick pit stop to get a snack, which we do every hour or two. And then we were about 130 miles away north of Zacatecas, and we were starting to spread out a little bit on the highway. There's something in my throttle that just falls right in a slot on a wide open road where no one's around, no one's looking. 85, 90 just feels comfortable to me. And so I was out front, Brian was right behind me, and then it was Justin and Bob. And Justin and Bob were starting to kind of drift out a little bit, so we were kind of getting these two pairs. And so we just had a conversation about, hey, we're starting to spread out. Why don't you guys just slow it down? And so we did. They kind of sped up a little bit. We kind of slowed down. I was looking at the back of him, and he got this little oscillation. And he said, he goes, what is this? And he stood up on his pegs, and he got what's called a tank slapper. And a tank slapper is when there's an ever slight oscillation in speed, a difference in speed between your front and your rear tire, which causes a wobble in your bike. I'm a believer of what happened is because of the tires he had. He had brand new Motaz tires on it. Bob had the same tires. Both of them had this slight little oscillation that came and went. There's 4 riders. 2 riders are having a similar type of condition, and they're the only commonality between the 2 of them are the tires. So I'm a believer that with what follows is mainly because of tires, but again, it's multiple variables that come into that scenario. And so when Brian stood up on his pegs and he said, what is this? And he tried to maintain the oscillation, it slid out from under him, and it happened very quickly in a matter of a couple seconds. And so he slid off the road, and when he slid off the road, there was a rock embankment that was there that he slid into the side of it, and there was some dust that was there, some rock area. And so when he hit the pavement and then slid into the more gravelly area, the dust kind of engulfed him, and he impacted a rock wall. And we all gathered around him, and unfortunately, stating the obvious, Brian lost his life. And it was incredibly painful, and it was horrific. And this is not the way any of us could have, in our biggest nightmares, envisioned how this trip in Mexico would begin.
Now, after all this happened, now we have to go through Brian's things right there on the side of the road and secure it so that the police don't steal it, so that the ambulance drivers don't steal it. So a little side note on this, the police in America have taken a bad hit, they've taken a bad rap for wrongdoing and doing things about, one or two bad apples here and there. So on our worst days, when onesie-twosie, police officers here do something bad or awful that was incorrect, I can say one thing about the law enforcement in America, that as a whole, we don't suffer from that. So to the law enforcement professionals that do their job every single day in America, I would like to say thank you for being the professional that you are. And I'm sorry that you have to suffer the wrath that falls out from one or a handful of bad apples within your profession doing something terrible that all of you have to pay for, because I, for one, am thankful for police officers that show up and do a good job.
So as we're now on the side of the road trying to save our friend's life, which we would find out later that there was basically nothing we could have done. But at this moment, we didn't really know that. So we were scrambling, and we were doing whatever we could to participate and try to save his life. And there were a couple other passerbys that stopped and tried to help us fight that battle. But ultimately, we lost that battle, and we lost our friend. It took 4 hours for an ambulance to show up. And the ambulance finally showed up, and they pronounced him dead on the scene. And they said there's nothing we can do for him, and they left. And there was a guy that stopped, a Mexican-American guy who lived in New Braunfels, Texas, and he stopped and he helped us. And that guy was an absolute godsend, because he took on the role of translator, mitigator, and he was our guardian angel for the day. Eventually, 7.5 hours later, we got Brian in a vehicle to where we started to go to Zacatecas. So when we approached the town, it was about midnight, and we tried to find where Brian was. And we went to a morgue, and he wasn't there where they told us he was gonna be. He wasn't there. We went to another morgue. He wasn't there. And so we ended up going to a couple more places before we ultimately found him. But then as we found where he was, they wouldn't let us in because we're not family members.
Right up.
The front and center question was, are we gonna ride again? Are we not gonna ride again? We didn't know what was next for us. Well, none of us felt like getting on the bike, and we love riding. I mean, we're passionate about riding. It does not take any convincing for us to get on a bike, and none of us felt like getting on the bike. So we took a month off, and then there was an ongoing discussion of, do we go, do we not go? Justin and I were of the opinion that if we delay, if we don't put it off, we might not ever get back on. I, for one, felt like we had to get back, in the saddle.
So the decision, which in my personal take and the whole events that happened were very mixed on continuing. Throughout discussions with Dan and Justin, I went back and forth. I don't want to go. I have to go. I should go. Maybe I shouldn't go. And eventually, there was no thought in the end that I could not go. This was something that I set out to do, that I wanted to do. I had friends doing it. Lost a best friend in doing that, but inside of me there was nothing that said you have to go do this, you have to continue. And so the decision was made, and we continued on towards leg 5.
Dude, this is coming loose. Let me just throw something at you guys.
Yeah.
We're gonna do basically a 3-hour ride right now.
Don't forget to tune in to the next episode of End of All Roads to follow the boys as they continue their ride around the world. See what new and fun places await them and what challenges they're going to have to overcome. All in the next episode of End of All Roads.